Worship series that is exploring how to get what we really want in life. Not what we kind of want, not what we desire to have just for the moment. We are talking about how to get the things that meet our deepest needs and desires. While that is a good question to be asking at any point in life, it is particularly relevant now as we are coming out of the pandemic and life is starting to look at least somewhat normal again. As that happens, a lot of us are questioning whether or not we want our lives to return to what they looked like pre-COVID. It's not that life pre-COVID was all bad or that we were working toward all the wrong things. It's just that the last year has been like someone hit the pause button. And now that things are starting up again, we are wondering if there might be a better path for how we live in the days to come. For some, the changes you are thinking about might be relatively small. A few tweaks here or there are all that you need. For others, the changes you might be considering are a bit bigger. And while there may be some of us who don't want to make any changes right now, the things we are talking about in this series might still prove valuable in days to come. So I encourage you to stick with us for the next few weeks. After all, wherever we are on the journey, there are moments in life when we all have to choose between the things we want and the things we really want. One of the first steps towards getting what it is that we really want is to recognize that when it comes to the things we often want in life, possessions, relationships, money, power, position, prestige, there is almost always a deeper need or longing that is behind that. Those deeper desires are usually things we can't just go out and buy, and that we often struggle to possess. Things like happiness, contentment, pleasure, security, well-being, intimacy, and peace of mind. These are the things most of us really want, the things we really need. The problem is that sometimes we aren't sure how to get these deeper level things, so we begin to chase things that we think will provide at least some satisfaction. For example, sometimes we really want to buy something, to own something that we are sure we are going to enjoy, something we think will make us happy. So we go out and buy it, and initially it works. It does in fact bring us some level of happiness and pleasure. But how long do those feelings last? Once the newness wears off, we often begin to think about having something else that would make us happier or leave us feeling more satisfied. So we begin to chase that. Not only can we get caught up in the cycle of chasing things we think will make us happy, sometimes the very fact that we end up getting what we wanted causes us to immediately feel something other than happiness. Have you ever bought something and within a very short period of time thought, I think I might have made a mistake? One of the reasons we find ourselves experiencing that kind of remorse is the reality that when it comes to the things we want, we aren't always very patient. After all, when we want something, when do we usually want it? Right now. But sometimes what we want right now isn't necessarily what we want later, which is what leads to those feelings of regret. I don't know about you, but there have been multiple times in my life when I have gotten something that I wanted, only to realize pretty quickly that I wish I hadn't gotten it. Before pulling the trigger on a purchase or a decision of some kind, we would be wise to hit the pause button and ask ourselves a few questions. What is behind this desire? What is it that I'm after? What is the deeper need, the deeper hope? Take some time to think about the moments in life when you are at your most content, your most peaceful, your most joyful. What do those moments look like? And will this purchase or decision bring you closer to those things? To be clear, I'm not suggesting that you never buy the thing or make the decision you are considering. Sometimes you still make those choices. but you make them with less impulse and more intentionality. Next week, we are going to dig in a little deeper and talk about something that will help us make those kinds of intentional decisions. But there's something else that we need to talk about when it comes to getting what we really want in life before we make any decisions about how we are going to get those things. We have got to talk about how our decisions might affect other people in our lives. While I've known a few people who are selfish enough not to care how their decisions impact those with whom they are in relationship, most of us would hate to think that a decision we made somehow harmed someone we care about or kept them from getting what they really want. That said, if you are human, there has likely been a time in your life when something that you wanted ran counter to what someone else in your life wanted. When you and someone else have competing desires and wants. Have you ever been there? I mean, it can be pretty intense. When this happens, there can be a battle of wills until one person wins and the other one loses, in which case, neither party really wins, do they? Of course, sometimes the tensions between two people about what we want isn't over something we can possess or buy. It's about what we want that other person to do, how we want them to respond, how we want them to act or behave. Sometimes we want nothing more than for someone else to do what we want them to do, and when they don't, we lash out. While it is possible that the other person is in the wrong, if we are honest, that's not always the case. Sometimes there really is no right or wrong. There is just what we want coming into conflict with what they want. And that can lead to all kinds of disagreements. Think about this for a moment. How many arguments have you been in with someone else? A spouse, a partner, a friend, a child, a parent, a boss, employee, where if you would take a step back, you would have to admit that your anger or displeasure was not really about what was right or wrong, but what was about what you wanted or desired. Whether you can think of a lot of arguments where that has been the case or just a few, can you remember a time when you ever said to someone else, "The reason I am so mad right now is because I'm not getting what I want"? The only people I've ever known who've admitted that kind of thing to me were under the age of 4. Seriously, 2- and 3-year-old children are not afraid to tell you they are mad because they aren't getting what they want. But when we get older, we aren't always so honest about the reasons for our anger. So instead of just admitting we are upset because we aren't getting what we want, we present an argument as to why the other person is wrong and we are right, while all the while they are doing the same thing because they aren't getting what they want either. There's this passage in the book of James that gets right at the heart of this reality. It begins, "Those conflicts and disputes among you, where do they come from? Do they not come from your cravings that are at war within you?" He gets right to the point, doesn't he? So many of the conflicts we have internally and with others are based on the things we crave, the things we want, either for ourselves, those things we can possess, hold, or earn, or behaviors that we want from other people. James continues, "You want something and do not have it, so you commit murder." Now, to be clear, this is hyperbole. It is meant to get our attention. It is not about us literally killing someone. That said, I'm guessing more than a few of us have experienced the kind of anger that comes when someone won't do what we want them to do, or won't let us do what we want to do, and nothing that we say will change their minds. Such moments can be more than just a little frustrating. But if we aren't careful, the thing we think we want in that moment, the thing we might want to do or have, may not be the kind of thing we really want for the long-term contentment and happiness we're seeking. But the tension, anger, and conflict it creates between us and another person may damage or even end a relationship that is really important to us. Again, be careful what you wish for and what you want, because in getting one thing, you might lose another. And most of the things we think we want aren't worth damaging or ruining a relationship in order to have them. The scripture continues. And you covet something and cannot obtain it, so you engage in disputes and conflicts. There's a reason coveting is listed as one of the 7 deadliest sins. When others have what we want, it can simultaneously make us resent them while making our cravings to have what we want even stronger. But remember, and this is so important, sometimes the cravings and desires we have for things, even the things we covet the most, aren't really the things that are going to make our lives better. Which is why it is so important for us to slow down, get quiet, and ask the question, what is it that I really want? Not just what you want or desire right now, but what you really want, the deep need that you really have. What's behind your cravings? If we don't stop long enough to figure out what it is that we really want, we'll never know how to get that. We will just keep chasing the things we desire right now in the vain hope that it will satisfy us in some way. Then, all of a sudden, we find that more and more of our life is in the rearview mirror, and we still don't have what we really wanted. We've lost the opportunity to have what really matters, and we may have even lost some relationships along the way. So how do we get there? How do we get what we really want? Well, here's how we do that according to James. You do not have because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly, in order to spend what you get on your pleasures. Now, let me unpack this just a bit. James is not saying that if we ask God in the right way, we will get everything that we want. That is not it at all. He's saying that we are asking wrongly because our requests to God often reflect the desires we have for pleasure right now. We are so focused on the immediate fulfillment of those desires, the surface level of our wants, that we are asking for the wrong things in the wrong ways. Instead, we want to ask for God's help in finding out what it is that we really need. Asking God to help us look more deeply within, beneath all the superficial wants and desires, and find what is really at the core. What can make this so hard is that it means we have to be vulnerable. To earnestly pray that God will help us see what is truly important and what will lead us toward getting those things we are so desperate to have. Things like security and well-being, purpose, true and lasting joy, not just some momentary happiness. The good news is that this is exactly the kind of place where Jesus resides. When we read the Gospels, we find Jesus talking about the things that will help meet our deepest needs over and over again. Sometimes, living into what Jesus teaches and hopes for us will be hard because it may mean we have to give up immediate wants for long-term gain. It can also be hard because Jesus will always be there to remind us that even though it is okay for our deepest needs to be realized, it is not okay for them to be realized at the expense of others. The abundant life that Jesus points to is never about one person alone. It is bigger than that, and if we are ever going to reach any level of deep contentment, it will only come when we are also working for others to find and have the same things. All right, here are the 2 things we can take away today that can help us get what we really want. First, before making a purchase or a decision that we think is going to bring us some kind of happiness or contentment, we need to pump the brakes and ask ourselves if there are any deeper needs we are trying to meet. And if so, is this thing or decision going to get us closer to that? Second, as we seek to get what we really want in life, are we considering the needs and wants of others? Are we putting our desires ahead of theirs? Are we doing something that might unnecessarily damage a relationship? After all, there are few things in life more important than the relationships we have with others. So we need to make sure that we aren't giving up something that really matters in order to chase something that may only bring temporary satisfaction. Next week, we're going to pick up here where we left off and talk about another key step we need to take in order to get what it is that we really want. I can't wait to share that message with you. Amen.